Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and the Daily Critique. Today's image was created by Richard, who's an advanced photographer from Wisconsin. Richard shot this image with a Nikon D300, 40mm effective focal length. Exposure information we have is f11 and 10 seconds. And the backstory, Richard says that this is the Milwaukee, Wisconsin lakefront. He said he was trying to capture a bridge to the city feeling or theme. So let's get right into it here. I do love the leading line of the bridge, the way that takes me out to the background of the city. Great building here to have in the background, really carrying the background, anchoring that. This is an image where we could talk about the idea of a general sense of formal balance or formal symmetry. These are images where, at least in some areas of the image, we could cut the image in half and flip and have the same information on either side. And flipping on the x-axis, pretty strong sense of formal symmetry in the foreground. And then in these secondary subjects, the group of buildings here and this building here, pretty formally symmetrical in terms of the way they're balancing on either side of the line. You know, there are definitely things that break that up. Main idea of this building, one of the main subjects, if not the main subject, is off the center, and it's not quite exactly center framed in the bottom of the frame, but there's quite a strong feeling of formal symmetry, and that can work really well in architectural subjects because so many architectural subjects are themselves formally symmetrical. You know, you can get a real strong sense of that on the bridge and other architectural ideas in the image. I really love shooting these kinds of shots during different variations of twilight. You get a sense of that here. There's still some color left over, either from in the evening, really late twilight, or this could be a very, very early morning twilight shot, but I like getting some detail in the sky here. It helps to carry the information in a way here where I'm going to pay more attention to it. The mind will just skip over areas that are black, that don't have any detail. And the other really nice thing that can happen in these types of shots, and we're getting a sense of that here, is that we can get a really beautiful complement of kind of an orange color coming from the average architectural accent lights, and then twilight blue. Blue and orange can play off of each other in a really nice way. Another thing I really like about this image is the movement of light along the bridge here, the sort of feeling of lighting effect we see in brightness and in color. You get a real subtle sense of kind of yellow and blue playing off of each other here, and I love the way that moves my mind's eye out into the scene. Real strong sense of leading line from near to far here. When I start to think about a perfect world variation for this image, I'd love to see even more value in the area of the sky. I'd like to see this be quite a bit brighter back here. Right now, for me, a lot of the value in the shot is in the bridge, and I feel like this really is a leading line to sort of get me out to the main idea, which is the city. And I just would brighten this up if I could afford to do that, working in Photoshop. A lot of times in low light, if we underexpose, we won't have enough detail, particularly in real continuous tone areas that have a lot of one color, to pull this off. So it could be a matter at this time of shooting a couple of frames, one where we give more value to the background of the sky and blending that. You could bring a split filter up from the bottom of the shot, so turning it sort of upside down in the way that we traditionally think about using it. A split filter is a filter that is dark for part of it, has density, and then clear. A lot of times we bring it down from the top of the image to hold back the brightness in the sky, but we could turn that upside down here and hold back the brightness on the bridge, which would help to open up the sky, or we could just shoot at a different time. The thing about twilight is there is really a specific window of time, early and late. It's 10 minutes centered around the beginning and end of civil twilight. That's on average about 30 minutes before sunrise, 30 minutes after sunrise, where the average illumination in the sky is almost perfectly balanced with architectural accent light. So if this in fact was in the evening, shooting this shot 5 or 10 minutes earlier would have allowed for, in the same relative exposure, quite a bit more detail in the background of the sky. The other thing I think about here, in addition to brightening this image, is potentially a little bit more contrast in the subject of the bridge. Right now there's a feeling of flatness of contrast in the decking of the bridge. that starts to really sort of just slow me down in there, and it becomes a negative space that's flat. There's so much contrast everywhere else in the image, and I might play around in different ways to try and push more of a feeling of contrast like I have there. I also love this lighting effect on the bridge, so I could see accentuating that with a saturation layer to create a feeling of even more movement. So far, this is what we've done to the image. The other things that this shot makes me think about is a potential crop where we simplify, and I'll show you why after I do the crop. I'm going to come inside of the buildings that are grouped on the outside. Come into right here. One of the things that happens for me when I crop, at least in the background, I'm not super happy with what it's done to the foreground, but in the background it simplifies, cuts down on some of the negative space out here, draws my mind's eye to this structure right here, which is really visually interesting. It sort of gives me one center of interest in the background. The previous crop, these high contrast areas are really sort of drawing my eye. And if I could have a sky that could come in here in a real dramatic way and fill in this negative space, maybe back up a little bit, maybe go to a little bit wider to create more of a feeling of leading line on the bridge. I might look at a vertical variation on this theme, and that's the other thing that I was going to mention. This is the kind of shot where I would love to see some cloud action to make the background and the negative space there a little bit more exciting. It's also a shot where I definitely can imagine a person or people along the railing of the bridge, walking down the middle, subtly motion blurred, somebody on a bike. I mean, I can just think of all kinds of scenarios with people in this environment that would add another layer of story, that could add a powerful sense of scale, that could hold my attention a lot longer as the viewer. For me, this would be a location that I would go back to over and over and over again, just continue to explore all the different possibilities. And that sort of leads me back to the beginning. I think Richard has chosen an absolutely great subject matter here for a photograph. I really like the feeling of formal symmetry in the framing and the original shot. Love the idea of shooting these kinds of shots in twilight to get a mix of the blue of twilight with a real strong sense of the city lights coming on and being very warm, really beautiful lighting effect on the bridge. Dramatic shot. I want to thank Richard for sharing it with us. Hope to see you again real soon on the Daily Critique.